My mom pushed my little daughter from her chair and said, "This table's for family. Go away." She fell hard. The room went silent. I helped her up and said 5 words. My mom's face went white. My dad started to stammer. I've spent most of my adult life managing my parents like they're emotional toddlers, constantly validating them, tiptoeing around their moods, pretending their insults were jokes. If you've never had narcissistic parents, you probably won't get it. But for those of us who have, you know exactly what I mean. Every family gathering feels like walking into a trap blindfolded. They weren't abusive in a way anyone could see. It was all subtle, twisting words, shifting blame, acting like I owed them something for simply existing. And somehow my sister always ended up on their side, whether she meant to or not. They treated her like the golden child, and she played the part well. So I kept showing up. Out of guilt mostly, out of hope sometimes. But everything shifted last Thanksgiving. It was my turn to host, and I went all out. Always do. Not for them, for my daughter Ally. She's 8, kind, creative, and just old enough to start noticing the way certain people treat her mom. She'd helped set the table that morning, carefully placing name cards and folding napkins like she was running a 5-star restaurant. She even asked if she could sit at the grown-up table this year. Of course, I said yes. My parents arrived exactly 20 minutes late. No text, no apology. My mom commented immediately on how the turkey smelled less dry than last year. My dad handed me a bottle of wine with the price sticker still on it. My sister and her husband came in behind them, quieter than usual. The table was beautiful. Everything was warm and inviting. Candles lit, plates set, Ellie's little touch on every detail. She slid into the seat beside mine, her place card written in sparkly marker. And then it happened. My mom stood behind her, looked at the seat, and without hesitation pushed Ellie aside, physically moved her. Ellie hit the floor, palms catching her fall. "This table's for family. Go away." She said it so casually, like Ellie was a stray dog sniffing around, like she didn't even matter. The room froze. My husband hadn't even sat down yet. My dad looked like he couldn't process what just happened. My sister stared at her plate. Ellie looked up at me, eyes wide, but not crying, just confused. She still had her name card in her hand. I helped her up and said 5 words, calm, clear, final. You're not family to her. My mom's expression cracked for the first time in years. My dad mumbled something, half a word maybe, but nothing came out. And I just stood there, suddenly seeing it all so clearly. The way they treated me. The way they were starting to treat my daughter. Like we owed them space in our lives just because of biology. Ellie walked to her room, quiet. I watched her go, then turned back, pulled out my chair, and started eating. Nobody else picked up a fork. But I had already made my choice. I was done pretending, and they were going to feel that slowly, piece by piece. My mom didn't say anything the rest of the meal, which, in her world, was the equivalent of a nuclear meltdown. Silence meant she wasn't in control. And if she wasn't in control, she was plotting. My dad kept trying to make small talk like nothing had happened. He asked about the turkey, the weather, if my husband was still working at the same job. I answered in one-word replies. I didn't look at my mom once. Ellie stayed in her room, probably playing with her dolls, not realizing she'd just become the reason I finally woke up. After dessert, my sister came into the kitchen while I was doing dishes. She stood there for a second like she wanted to say something, but didn't. She just dried a few plates in silence, then left. My mom waited until everyone was getting ready to leave. She lingered in the doorway, holding her purse like she was at a funeral. "You overreacted," she said. Just that. I stared at her. I wasn't even angry anymore. It was worse than that. I just didn't care. Not about her feelings, not about what she thought I should have done. Something in me had finally shut off, like a fuse blown too many times. I didn't respond. She hated that. She turned to my dad, clearly expecting backup. He scratched his head, looked at me, then muttered, "Maybe just let it go, Barb." I closed the door behind them before they made it to the car. That night, I sat in bed replaying everything, not just Thanksgiving, everything. The way my mom talked down to me at every chance, the time she told me I'd never be as smart as my sister, when she dismissed my miscarriage like it was a scheduling conflict, when she forgot Ellie's birthday, and blamed me for not reminding her. I'd excused it all. I'd forgive and moved on, tried to keep the peace. But this time, she had crossed a line I couldn't unsee. They didn't just disrespect me. They humiliated my daughter in her own home, in front of her entire family. And not a single person stood up for her. Not even my sister. So I made a list, not a metaphorical one, a real list on paper, of every errand, every ride, every favor I'd done for them in the past year. Doctor appointments, picking up prescriptions, watching their dog when they went to Florida, sorting through their tax stuff because Barbara is good with paperwork. And I decided right then, no more. They were going to get exactly what they gave. Distance, silence, coldness. And if they thought I was bluffing, they didn't know me at all. They didn't call me for 3 days after Thanksgiving. Not once. Not to check on Ally. Not to apologize. Nothing. I wasn't surprised, but I kept checking my phone anyway, as if the people who'd spent years belittling me were suddenly going to grow a conscience. When the silence held, I knew what they were doing. This was their classic move. Punish with distance, act like I was the one being dramatic, and then wait until they needed something again, then pretend like none of it ever happened. So I flipped the script. That Thursday, I didn't show up to take my mom to her physical therapy appointment. I'd been driving her every week, 30 minutes each way, sitting in the parking lot like a personal chauffeur. She acted like it was a favor I owed her. No gas money, no thank you, just more complaints about how her body wouldn't be this way if I hadn't been such a difficult pregnancy. At 10:47 she called. I let it go to voicemail. Barbara, I'm still at home. You're late. Are you coming or not? She sounded irritated, not concerned. I didn't call back. That afternoon my dad texted me. What's going on with you? Your mom's upset. Please talk to us. I left that one unread. The next day, I got another message from my mom. So, this is how you treat your parents after everything we've done for you? No mention of Ellie. No apology. Just guilt-tripping and blame, like always. So, I moved on to phase 2. They had me managing all their bills online. Electric, insurance, credit cards, even some weird newspaper subscription they refused to cancel. I'd set up automatic payments years ago because they kept forgetting and blaming me when late fees hit. I logged into every account, canceled everything, and logged out. Then, I deleted all their passwords from my files. 2 days later, my dad left me a shaky voicemail, saying their power company had called about a missed payment and threatened to shut off service. He sounded confused, almost scared. I answered that one. I'm not your secretary, I said. Figure it out. Then I hung up, felt freeing, like I was finally stepping out of a role I never agreed to, one I was forced into simply because I was reliable and didn't cause scenes. That was always my sister's job. She finally called me the next day. I almost didn't pick up, but I was curious. She sounded tense. They're freaking out, she said. They said you're ghosting them and letting everything fall apart. What are you doing? I didn't bother easing into it. I'm doing what I should have done years ago, letting them deal with their own mess. There was silence for a second. Then her tone shifted. Less defensive, more uncertain. Okay, but you just cut them off like with no warning. No warning? You were there. You saw what she did to Ellie, and you said nothing. She paused. I didn't think it was that serious. She pushed her to the ground and told her she wasn't family. My sister didn't reply. Just a quiet exhale and then, okay, I don't know. I'll talk to them. That could have been the end of it. I honestly thought she'd side with them again. That's how it always went. But 2 days later, she texted me out of nowhere. Did she really push Ellie? It stopped me cold. That text meant one thing. She had doubts. She was finally starting to question them. I waited 2 days before replying. I wanted it to sink in. Yes, you saw it. You just didn't want to believe it. She didn't reply after that, at least not right away. But something changed, because when it was her kid, they turned on. When their cruelty finally reached the golden child's perfect little world, she'd be forced to see them for who they really were. And I was already preparing for what came next. I wasn't just cutting them off. I was going to make sure they felt it. I thought I had more time before things escalated. I was planning everything carefully, cutting off support, limiting contact, documenting things, even researching legal steps just in case. But I didn't expect them to implode so quickly. And I definitely didn't expect my sister to flip sides. It happened the following weekend. My sister had decided to take her daughter Mia over to my parents' house for a quick visit. She told me later she didn't want to argue. She just wanted to keep the peace, let the dust settle, and pretend like things were fine. Classic move. I told her to be careful. She brushed me off. That night, she called me in tears. Not angry, not defensive, furious, but not at me. Apparently, they'd been sitting in the living room making small talk. My mom was rambling about the neighbor's new car. My dad was dozing off in his recliner, and Mia was on the floor, playing with a toy unicorn she brought with her. That unicorn had been her favorite for months. She named it Stella, dressed it in doll clothes, even made it a paper crown. And then my mom stepped on it. Not accidentally. She looked down, saw it, made a face and crushed it with her heel. Said it was just cheap plastic and that Mia should stop acting like a baby. Mia started crying. My sister told her to go to the car. Then she turned to our mom and asked her flat out why she did that. And you know what our mom said? She's too soft, just like Ellie. You're letting her grow up weak. That's when my sister realized this wasn't about me being sensitive or overreacting or blowing Thanksgiving out of proportion. This was who they were now, bitter, entitled, and nasty to anyone who didn't worship them. My sister left without saying goodbye. She didn't even help my dad up when he tripped trying to follow her out the door. The next day, she came over with Mia and a bag of pastries. No warning, just showed up and walked straight into my kitchen like it was 2009 again and we were still close. She didn't even take off her coat before she said it. You were right. I'm done. I didn't say anything for a second. Just poured her coffee and sat down across from her. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me pictures of the broken unicorn. I want to do whatever you're doing, she said. All of it. Whatever it takes. I opened my laptop and showed her the folder I'd been building. Screenshots of texts, notes on their finances, missed appointments, instances of neglect. I'd even looked up how to file a formal report on elderly manipulation, since they'd been using that angle with neighbors, saying I was abandoning them. She just nodded. We called a lawyer that week. Not to sue them. There wasn't anything criminal yet, but to document a pattern, just in case. Our lawyer said we couldn't press charges for Ellie or Mia without actual harm, but she agreed their behavior was unhinged and escalating. We filed a restraining notice. Not a full order, just documentation in writing, a paper trail, then the police. We didn't expect much, but I went ahead and filed an incident report for what happened on Thanksgiving. Again, no charges, but a written warning was delivered to my parents' house. Just enough to shake them. And it worked. 2 days later, my mom called me from a number I didn't recognize. Left a message, low and furious. How dare you bring the police into this? You want war? You got it. I didn't even flinch, because this wasn't war. This was consequence. And for the first time in our lives, they couldn't spin the story. We had proof. We had each other. They'd spent years turning us against each other. But now, they'd built something else. En alliance. After the police delivered the warning, everything went eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no angry voicemails, just nothing. It was like they vanished. And honestly, I expected some kind of retaliation. Maybe a rant on Facebook, Or my mom showing up at Ellie's school pretending it was Grandparents' Day. She'd done stuff like that before, but they disappeared. For a while, I wondered if they were just regrouping, waiting to play some long game. But then my sister got a call from one of our dad's old friends who said they'd seen our parents at the grocery store. And my mom told them we had cut off all contact because we were ungrateful and had joined some women's cult. A cult. She even added that we were trying to steal their money, which was laughable considering they were 2 credit card payments behind and living off Social Security. I should have been angry, but I wasn't. I was tired. My sister and I met once a week after that. Sometimes with the girls, sometimes just us. At first, it was awkward. We weren't used to being on the same side, but it got easier. We talked about our parents a little, but more often we talked about everything else, schools, or the weird things our kids say. We even started joking about getting matching tattoos that said, "Not the golden child." Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address. I opened it, thinking it might be some bill they accidentally forwarded to me, but it wasn't. It was a handwritten note from my mom, only 2 sentences long. "You think you've won something, but you'll need us eventually. Everyone does." There was no greeting, no name, just that. I didn't show it to Ellie. I just folded it, stuck it in the folder with everything else, and emailed a scan to our lawyer. My sister got one too, almost identical, except hers said, "Your daughter won't love you if you turn her against her grandparents." That was the moment she cut them off completely. No hesitation, no questions. She changed her number. She blocked every contact. She even warned her husband's family not to share any updates with them. She was done. But something happened that neither of us expected. A week after the letters, my sister and I went to clean out the storage unit we shared with our parents. We were still paying the fee on it, and we figured it was time to deal with it. Inside were the usual junk piles. Old chairs, broken holiday decorations, boxes of photos. But tucked in a plastic bin labeled Barber High School was something that stopped me cold. There was a small stack of letters, all unopened, all addressed to me, from colleges, from internships I'd applied to. One was from a writing program in New York I barely remembered applying to, full acceptance, with a scholarship, all dated from the same summer, the year I'd stayed home and worked 3 part-time jobs because my parents told me I wasn't college material. They'd hidden them. My sister found me standing there, holding one of the letters, frozen. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. We both knew. This started long before Thanksgiving. That was just the moment everything snapped. We stood there for a long time in that storage unit. It smelled like dust and old regret, but the silence was louder than anything. My sister didn't say a word when I handed her the letters. She just read the names on the envelopes, looked at the postmarks, and shook her head slowly, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing, even though she could. I think she just didn't want to admit they'd been that cruel. But that's the thing. They always were. Thanksgiving wasn't the beginning. It was the final public crack in something that had been broken since we were kids. That's what those letters proved. They'd always seen me as disposable. Someone to lean on, but never lift up. We boxed up the rest of the storage unit and tossed half of it in a dumpster behind the building. The rest we donated. We kept exactly 1 box each. Photos of us as kids. Before we realized what kind of parents we had, we agreed not to show them to our daughters. Let them remember the present, not the damage we escaped from. A month passed. Then we heard nothing. Christmas came and went. No cards, no surprise visits, no passive-aggressive texts about being the only parents spending the holidays alone. They didn't even try. My guess is, the police warning and the lawyer shook them more than they let on. Good. My sister and I took the girls ice skating that winter. It was clumsy and cold and perfect. Ellie fell twice. Mia cried once. And I ended up buying $24 worth of hot chocolate for kids who took 3 sips and abandoned it. But the entire time, I kept thinking, this is what family's supposed to feel like. Not control, not guilt, not being treated like a servant because of whose daughter I was. Just peace. We made a plan that day, a new one. Every holiday, we'd spend it together. No drama, no weird tension, just us and the girls. Maybe in a cabin next year, maybe out of state, maybe somewhere warm. It didn't matter. What mattered was we finally saw it for what it was. They didn't change. We did. They're still living in that house, I assume, still telling neighbors some twisted version of events, still hoping we'll cave. They don't know that I framed one of those college letters and put it above my desk, not as a reminder of what I missed, but of how far I've come in spite of them. Ellie asked about them once. Just once. Why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa anymore? I thought for a second and said, because not all people who share your name treat you like they love you. Some just want to be in charge. She nodded, said, okay, and went back to playing. She's already stronger than I ever was at her age. And that's how I know I'm doing this right. I'm not rebuilding the past. I'm building something new, something better. And they're not invited.